We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
A rather dramatic introduction for today's show as a low-flying commercial airliner flies overhead. Good morning. You may hear a few more of those throughout the course of the broadcast today. This is Robert Phoenix, and I am with you today. This is the 27th of July, and it is the day of the London Olympics, Zion Olympics, a.k.a. the Rothschild Olympics, which takes place tonight in London, local time, at 9 p.m. And accordingly, the American experience will be, of course, tape delayed. So if there's anything that needs cleaning up during those ceremonies, they've got quite a few hours in order to do that. And make it all really nice for everyone, theoretically. This is a kind of a big day in many regards. The Cryptographic Society of the Internet has been working on the London Olympics ever since Rick Clay got into the act. I think about 3 years ago, and had his groundbreaking interview on Red Ice Radio. And it was not long after that where Rick Clay died under quite mysterious circumstances. He was young. He was only in his 30s and conceivably in good health. But apparently he got a little too close to something that people were not really thrilled that he was getting at. And so I've actually been in communication with some people around the world, people in London, and one of the people that I've been in touch with recently has been sharing me some stories about life in London, actually fairly near the Olympic Stadium. And there is a place there called Clay's Lane, which was kind of an old dump. And they had methane readers, and it was not a place where you would want to hang out for too long. But there were buildings there, and people squatted there, and he was one of them. And it's actually, like I said, a fairly close proximity to the London Olympics, the Olympic Stadium in London, which is in the East End of London. And I found it fascinating that it would be Clay's Lane, and that Rick Clay would be the person who was sort of breaking ground in this whole arena. And then I thought about the whole notion of clay and what that meant. And everything starts with clay. Bricks are made out of clay. So in some ways, if you think about it, clay became a symbol in his own cosmology. Now you have to ask yourself, well, did that really, was that quote destiny, or was that happenstance or coincidence? You know, was Rick Clay part of the overall and overarching pattern of what we've seen thus far at the Olympics? It's a very interesting question to think about, especially when you take into account everything that clay means and the relationship to Clay's Lane in London. One of the things that Rick Clay did talk about quite extensively was the connection to Blake. And what do we have as the opening ceremonies? We have Danny Boyle, who is going to be recreating Blake's Dark Satanic Mills. So the opening ceremonies start off as the England's Idol, and it's IDYLL, England's Idol, and it is a recreation of Glastonbury and the tour. And they're going to have, you know, live animals there, sheep and goats and cows and dogs and chickens. You know, it is supposed to recreate this Edenic, untainted, mystical, primal, green vision of London in England, not just London, England. And the way that the Olympic Stadium is set up is that the tour is on the west side of the stadium, which means it's facing in the exact direction of Glastonbury's tour. So there is a ley line alignment between the two of them. This is a really important to take note of. If you go to London, or if you go to England, you'll experience the ley lines in very, very powerful ways. I've traveled the ley line circuit. Not all of the nodes of the ley line, but some significant ones. If you look at the Beckham, I think it's the Higgs-Beckham map of ley lines in the world, you can see where, and I talked a little bit about this on the show on Wednesday. You can see where the focal point of the energy for all the ley lines, it's a big one. It starts in the north of Scotland, and I believe it's very near Rosslyn Chapel. And then from there, those lines descend and come downward into the rest of Great Britain. And the major network basically runs through Findhorn and then down into London. And then it goes, there's a western split that goes out to Stonehenge and Glastonbury, and then there's another point, even though it's not on this map. The other point is Iona, and Iona is a small island off the coast of Scotland, and it's where Christianity came from Ireland via St. Columba many years ago. And it's a sparsely populated. I've been to Iona. It's a very strange place. It's very deep and very strange. I've walked all over that island, and it's not a big island, but something very strange happens there with time. I can't quite describe it, but it's you can walk a very short distance, and it seems like it takes you forever to get anywhere in that place. So if you draw a line, it comes down from Rosslyn Chapel through Edinburgh, down into London, and then east to Glastonbury, and then connecting to back up, you would go north from Glastonbury and through Iona and back up to the top. So it forms a triangle. But out of London, the line moving out of London eventually goes through France, through Paris, and then it goes into Giza. Everything goes into Giza. So what they've done is they've aligned the Olympic Stadium with the tour, and they've aligned it so that it is connected energetically to the access points of this major ley line. So energetically, that's what's going to be taking place. They're tapping into a grid. And the energy that they're going to be using to tap into the grid is, well, it's human energy. Everything that they're doing there around the Olympic Stadium is done to amplify human energy. And they're going to be using that human energy to power the underlying unfoldment of the Olympics. Does that make sense? One of the things that they're also doing is, I find this to be interesting, is Daley Thompson, he was a major Olympian for the English. He was a decathlon athlete. He won the gold medal, the decathlon gold medal. I think it might have been in Spain. Anyway, he's doing this promotion. I believe it's with Visa or one of the banks, maybe Chase. And they have the London Eye. The London Eye is a giant Ferris wheel, which is right on the Thames. And they built this for the 2000 ceremony, right? This is the when we went into the new millennium. That eye was there. That was I think it was a Tony Blair project, by the way. Anyway, we could get into the symbolism of the London Eye if we wanted to. I mean, it is the all-seeing eye, which looks out over the entirety of London. It is also the wheel of time and the wheel of karma. It is also the hamster wheel that we're all running around in. It's a pretty significant symbol. Anyway, what's happening is that they have connected a series of lights from the London Eye to a computer. And there's a specific Twitter account, I believe, and not just a Twitter account, but I think it's like a spider that reads all the tweets that have to do with the Olympics and that are very positive about the Olympics. But I also think that there's a specific Twitter account where you can tweet on this one account. And what happens is if there's something positive, I'm not sure how they determine what's positive, but if there's something positive that takes place, or positive message, then that positive message is turned into a signal which begins to determine how much light the eye gets. So if it's a very positive series of tweets, the eye lights up a lot. So what they're doing is they're encouraging people to put their energy into the London Eye. Fascinating stuff. There's also the sculpture, which is a hideous sculpture. It looks like the human DNA wrapped in chains and barbed wire, chain link fencing. That is supposed to also be able to capture human energy. And then inside the stadium itself, during the opening ceremonies, which is what Jay Widener and I talked about, there's the tower, which it's actually a smokestack, but it's an obelisk. And again, what's the obelisk doing? It's sucking up the energy of all the athletes that walk by it through that lane, which is, I believe, the River Thames, inside the stadium. It's also, it looks like the World Serpent as well. So these Olympics have been set up really to soak up energy. That's what it's all about. And when people watch the opening ceremonies, it's going to be very, I think, apparent as to what that's about. It's really about absorbing the attention. Now, I did a chart for the London Olympics, and it's at maybe I'll put this in the chat room here. Let me grab the link. I'll put this in the chat room, and I know some astrologers hang out here from time to time. So I'll look. Oh, great. So Gloria is in the chat room. I'm going to let her take a crack. Anybody can take a crack at it. You don't have to be an expert at any of this stuff. That's really the new age. There's no more priests. There's no more high priests or high priestesses in the new age. We're all part of it. Why won't this let me copy this? Hold on, because I really want to copy this. I want you to look at the chart because I think it's very interesting. There are two aspects of this chart that are just, I think, mind blowing. Let's try this one more time. Let's see if I can get this in here. Hold on. Pardon me while I hear all this incessant clicking on the radio. All right, let's try it one more time. Here we go. It is not going to let me paste this. Dang, why is that? I'm not sure. Okay, well, it's not a conspiracy, is it? I don't think so. Let me try this. I will not be denied. I tell you, I will not be denied. Let's see, Control P. Let's try Control P. All right, hello. All right, hello. Let me try this one more time. Okay, maybe Gloria. You have to click on the box. Yeah, I know. I've been clicking. Gloria, maybe you can listen to this and put this chart in here. So look up, since you're listening, look up London, 9 p.m. London, 9 p.m. Okay. And it's today. If you can make that chart, London, 9 p.m. That's when the Olympics go off. I'd love your take on that. Okay, hold on. Let me just see here. There it is. Okay, so when you look at the chart, the ascendant. So today is the date. Today is the date for the Olympics. So it's the 27th. It's July 27th at 9 p.m. July 27th. There you go. July 27th, 9 p.m. London. This is the start of the opening ceremonies. Okay. So when you look at the chart, what's on the ascendant? Aquarius is ascending at 9 degrees on this chart. So 9 is the number of completion, right? It's the end. It is the end of the numeric cycle. And then we go to 10, right? So theoretically, what we're looking at with 9 degrees on the Aquarius ascendant is the numerological conclusion of a sequence of numbers. The next number would be 10, and that's the first house. You enter into the first house at 10 degrees Aquarius, which theoretically would symbol the birth of a new age. Chiron and Neptune are both conjunct. They're both in the first house. It's a very wide first house, and it incorporates Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries. So we have 3 energies all at work during the opening ceremonies. Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries. Think about that for a second. That's pretty significant. And right on the midheaven is the true node, which is in Sagittarius. And then the moon today is in Scorpio. It'll be at 24 degrees Scorpio. And Scorpio moon is very intense. It squares Neptune in the chart. Scorpio moon is very secretive, super secretive. So, and it's in its fall. Not house Scorpio. Other aspects about the chart, there's a conjunction between Mercury and Leo, very tight conjunction, 6 and 5 degrees. And at the time that the opening ceremonies begin, Mercury and the Sun are right on the cusp of the 6th house, 6th and 7th house. By the time that they end, which I think the opening ceremonies are about 3 hours long, by the time that they end, two things will have occurred. Number one, the ascendant will have moved from 9 degrees to 10 and possibly even 11 degrees Aquarius. So what we'll see from the start to the finish is the numeric procession of going from the end of a cycle, which is 9, into the beginning of a new cycle, 10, and then I'm assuming that the games will end, or the opening ceremonies will end when the ascendant is at 11. So it would be 11 Aquarius. Now, I'm going to get into the symbolism of 11 here for a little bit as it relates to duality, which, by the way, when we look at the Olympics, the 4th house is occupied by both Jupiter and Venus in Gemini in the 4th house. And Venus forms a trine between Saturn and Mars. And if you go to my website, or if you've been reading my website, I just put something up yesterday, and it's about Gemini, and it's about the role Gemini plays, which is a very, very powerful aspect. This whole concept of Gemini as a duality, and I'm going to be putting up the next couple of posts over the course of the next few days. There's just so much information that it's taken me quite a while to sort through it. Now, if you go to the show page, like today's show page, what you'll see, one of the pictures that I chose today is a shot. This is a shot from you're looking at the gateway to the London Olympics. This is on the show page, and in the background is the Olympic Stadium. And this is behind, I believe it's, isn't that the London Bridge? And it's definitely the Thames. And what you'll see is a reflection of the bridge, the arch of the bridge, the 5 rings, the stadium in the background, and then the reflection of everything below it, as above, so below. It is like an epigram. The picture is like an epigram. And these things don't happen by chance. These are very well thought out and thoroughly staged moments, or thoroughly staged and in some ways manipulated symbols. So then you complete the whole, right? If you complete the whole, then you get the wheel, you get the eye, you get the astrological wheel. But it's a clue in some ways of this whole concept of mirroring and what a large role that Gemini plays in all of this. So what I tried to do is I tried to get into the shooting in Aurora, Colorado, and make a link between it and London, and it's there. It's there in a very big way. And I started to get into the films of Christopher Nolan because I think, like Stanley Kubrick, there are quite a few clues in his films. And more than just kind of a Kubrickian sort of world within a world, which is what Jay Weidner talks about, like a story within a story, or a film within a film, or film within a film within a film. The Nolan films are a reality within a film, or a hyper-reality within a film. And I'll try to explain this the best way that I can. I went back 2 nights ago, and I watched Christopher Nolan's first film. It's called Following. And it was written by his brother, Jonathan, who is also the scriptwriter for Memento, and also the scriptwriter for The Dark Knight Rises. Jonathan is a Gemini. And as I posted in my post, that there are so many synchronicities with the actors and the sign of Gemini that it's pretty mind-blowing. Now, I wanted to go back and find out where Christopher Nolan planted his flag. So his first movie, Following, it's the story of a guy who lives in London, and he just follows people around. That's what he does. He winds up following this one guy who brings him into a very bizarre, violent, and theoretically tragic, whatever that means, set of circumstances. And this guy, who is this guy that he winds up hooking up with? I'll tell you who he is. He's a gaslighter. This is who he is. He walks around to people's homes, he opens their doors, and he moves things around. This is Christopher Nolan's very first film. And what do we see here? We see 2 individuals cooperating, right? One is the witness, the other is the actor. Can't have one without the other. There's one scene in Following. Kid you not. This, you've got to remember this. This is years before he even got close to a Batman script. Years before. He would have to do Memento and Insomnia before he would get to the first Batman movie. There's a scene where they knock on a door to see if anybody's home. And what is on the door? It is the Batman symbol. This is his very first film. So here we have Batman. We have, by the way, a very, very dark act in gaslighting. So gaslighting, just to let you know, or gas lamping, depending upon, it's generally called gaslighting. There was a movie called Gaslight. I think it was with Ingrid Bergman, if I'm not mistaken. And the whole idea is people are trying to drive her nuts. And they keep telling her that she's leaving the gas on. She's not. She's turning it off, but somebody else will come in and turn it on. And there's a campaign to drive her insane. Well, this is a technique that is used to get people off their rocker. Theoretically, people come into the house and then they move stuff around. I've been gaslit, by the way, many times. I don't care anymore. And I don't want to get into the circumstances, but this is what his film is about. Very first film. Then you get into Batman, the first Batman film. Well, okay, let's go to Memento. What is Memento about? Memento is about a split personality. A guy that's basically living 2 different stories. Why? He has a form of amnesia. He can't remember anything. So he's writing down all of these words and clues on his hands and arms. And the movie is shot. So the narrative of the movie is backwards. You start at the end of the movie, and then you go to the beginning. And meanwhile, that's one character. That's one level of consciousness, the guy that can't remember anything. Meanwhile, the guy who has the memory, he's coming back in the other direction, theoretically from the start of the movie, not the back of the movie, and the 2 narratives in black and white and color begin to meet in the middle. It's a very, very Gemini effect. But this whole starting off backwards is important because it speaks to this occult operation of reversal that Crowley talks about. Learn how to walk backwards, learn how to talk backwards, learn how to think backwards. And what we're kind of doing now, theoretically, when we break these things down, is we're learning how to think backwards. We're learning how to look at these events not from a linear standpoint, but from some other angular standpoint with the mind. So we're learning how to think backwards. Anyway, the Memento film is all about that. It's an occult work. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm not Christian. I'm not saying that this is a complete occult working in a bad. But I'm just letting you know it's what it is. It's exactly what it is. Christopher Nolan, getting into this whole duality thing again. Christopher Nolan has dual citizenship. He's part American and he's part English. Interesting. His brother does the scripts. Again, you've got this duality piece. And then when you get into Batman, you begin to see the players. Morgan Freeman, Gemini. Cillian Murphy, Gemini. Liam Neeson, Gemini. So here we have this confluence of Gemini. And then within the story of Batman itself, there's Bruce Wayne Batman. Duality, Gemini. Ra's al Ghul, Henri Ducard. Ducard is too. Gemini. You look at people inside of his films, for instance, Hugh Jackman and Guy Pearce. Guy Pearce was in Memento. Hugh Jackman was in The Prestige. Libra. They're both Libra. He does stuff like this. And this is how these people show up. You get into The Prestige, it's a whole other film. The Prestige is all about doubling. It's about cloning. It's about twins. And in fact, it's at the heart of the movie that they can only that Alfred Borden can only pull off his magic. Alfred Borden, by the way, played by Christian Bale, who shows up in, of course, Batman. He can only pull off the Prestige because he has a twin. He has a twin. Hugh Jackman, who plays Robert Angier, he can only pull off his trick of the Prestige. The Prestige is being in one part of the trick and looking like you're going to die or suffer some sort of calamitous end while your double pops up in another part of the theater. It's almost virtually impossible. And the reason why Christian Bale's character, Borden, does it all the time is because he has a brother. And nobody knows this. It's a secret. Not even his wife knows it because they actually switch partners, which is kind of interesting. Or they switch Bordens. Yes. And so what happens is Hugh Jackman's character, Angier, finds Nikola Tesla. And Tesla has this technology that looks like it's teleportation, but it's really not. What it really is creating doubles. And what Hugh Jackman does, he buys technology and he creates the double. He doesn't have a twin. He creates the double, and then he kills the double. So every time he does the trick, he has to kill a part of himself. Okay, do you see where this is going? There's a sacrifice here. There's a ritualized sacrifice. The magic trick is itself the stage for the ritual magic to take place. Now, if we go to his next film, Inception, well, it's not even Inception. If you go to Batman, The Dark Knight, second film after Batman Begins, who plays the Joker? The Joker's played by Heath Ledger. Who is Heath Ledger hanging out with before he died? He was married. He had a kid. He was living in Brooklyn. The marriage was not going well. Heath Ledger was being messed with in a very big way. He was on all kinds of meds. He was on drugs. And who was he hanging out with? Mary Kate Olsen. What is Mary Kate Olsen? She's a twin. She was the first person that was called, not Michelle Williams, his wife, not the police, Mary Kate Olsen. She was the first person that was called when Heath Ledger was found dead. What is Mary Kate Olsen? She's a Gemini. So now you have Heath Ledger, right? And in Inception, Christopher Nolan brings two actors into his sort of stable of actors and really gives them a launching pad for their careers. One is Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and the other is Tom Hardy. If you look at Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Heath Ledger side by side in certain pictures, they look like the same person. So we have here, again, is a doubling. It's a double effect. Tom Hardy plays Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays a character named, get ready for this, Blake in The Dark Knight Rises. And what are we going to be looking at tonight at the Olympics? Blake's dark satanic mills. This is part of the theme. Who is making a really big stir and ruckus at the Olympics right now? Mitt Romney. What was Mitt Romney, and is Mitt Romney associated with? Bane. Do you see these very strange, bizarre, interconnected, morphing from film to quote-unquote real life to speculative life? Do you see where all this is going? Maybe you don't. All right, let me give you what I think is happening here. And I'm going to write about this on the blog too. Here's what I think is happening. If you look at DC Comics, which is the comic book company that launched Batman, DC stands for direct current. And direct current comes from batteries. And I believe that part of what we're witnessing here is the operation of human batteries and the tapping of human batteries. And that's exactly what the Olympics are about, tapping the human battery, because there is no energy connected to these things at all unless people give them or give it their energy. And when we have these events like what happened in Aurora and the Olympics, which are happening right, today, there's a huge amount of energy that is focused on those events. Oh, it's tragic. It's this, it's that. And, we're supposed to, break down and immediately have this knee-jerk emotional response. And I'm not taking anything away from what happened to those people and, the people that are associated with them. If indeed these things really did occur the way they have been reported to occur. But the immediate response the immediate reaction is this emotional chain pulling, for lack of a better term. And then when all that emotional chain pulling takes place, then what happens? Well, we've got to have tougher gun laws. Oh, we've got to get more security in place. Well, that's part of it. That's part of what's happening. But what's really happening here is, I believe, reality is being completely hijacked. That's what I think is happening. That there is, for lack of a better term, a cinematic / matrix / reality hacking going on. And these film in general plays a role in it, but these films in particular, especially now, are a very big part of this. One of the films I've really talked about is Inception. And Inception is literally about this. It's about temporal distortions. And reality is dream. Dream is reality. Layer, 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 layer. By the way, here's another little interesting significance. Tom Hardy, Bane, right? What did Tom Hardy or Thomas Hardy write? He wrote a book about Jude, Jude, It's one of his famous books. Who is singing tonight at the Olympics? Your friend and mine, Paul McCartney. What song is he singing? Hey Jude. You see, okay, I know it sounds absolutely and utterly crazy, but what I'm seeing here is a very complicated series of symbols that are both astrological, people that are real to the extent that we know them, right? And events and cinema all fused together to help create another reality, a reality that locks us into the wheel of time, which is the London Eye. And it's a dark wheel of time. So when we look at Aquarius, again on the wheel, we look at Aquarius on the ascendant, what do we see? We see, there it is. It's in some ways, this is the dawn of a dark new dawn. That's what aurora is. Aurora means dawn, but it happened at midnight. So there's a saying called the dawn of a new day, right? I'm sure many of you have heard that. It is code. The dawn of a new day is code for the Aquarian age, the new age, the false age, the age of Lucifer. This is the code for it. There we have the dawn of a dark new day, which takes place in aurora, which does have all the significance with London, XXX. If you look in the theater in aurora, you'll see 3 X's on the marquee. And so what we have is we have an attempt to lock us into what I would call the anti-new age or the dark new age. And I do believe that 12-21-12 plays a large role in this, and for a different reason. Because when we look at 12-21-12, what we see at that point theoretically is the Earth with the alignment being cut off with the galactic center. And where is the galactic center? It's at the last degrees of Sagittarius. So if the Earth is cut off from the galactic center in the last degrees of Sagittarius, what is it then exposed to on the back end? It's exposed to Gemini, right? I mean, think about that. It's exposed to Gemini. Gemini is opposed Sagittarius. So we're going to be influenced by Gemini, not Sagittarius, during that day, even though the sun will be in Sagittarius. And Jupiter will be almost exact opposite the sun and almost exactly opposite the galactic center. Where's Jupiter? It's in Gemini. And so what we have here is, I believe, a series of events, both in the cinema, what I call the cinematrix, and reality, and the London Olympics is part of it, to create an eternal dualism. See, what we want to do is we want to come to some form of unification. You know, this is where everything is headed. We're headed towards unification, and a real unification. The false unification would be the singularity. Another false unification would be the New World Order. These are synthetic and artificial manifestations of unification. And that's what's planned with all these events, is what we call the false ascension or the dark ascension. while over here, our internal lives are not about that. Our internal lives are about something much more organic and eternal and unified. And I can speak to that in my life and other people's lives. Things are happening. Things are happening in a really, really good way. Meanwhile, this overlay of reality is now coming in and wanting to anchor itself as the dominant form of consciousness. And I believe that what tonight's event, and I don't think that anything terrible is going to happen tonight, by the way. I don't. Now, there could be things that can happen between tonight and 21 days from this point forward, but I don't think anything terrible is going to happen tonight, because there's a lot of energy that needs to be harvested during these opening ceremonies. And they're not going to waste the opportunity to harvest that energy. The other interesting little side note here, again, Paul McCartney, Gemini, right, singing the song that takes people out of the opening ceremonies. Who was he last married to? Think about that. Who was he last married to? He was married to Heather Mills. And what is the event? It is Blake's dark satanic mills. Okay, do you see where all this kludges together? And what is the dark ascension? The dark ascension is literally taking the lower fourth dimension and then just plastering it over 3D reality. That's what it's about. It's locking the lower fourth and bringing the lower fourth into this realm as a consensus reality. And the lower fourth, by the way, is not a place you want to hang out. Just not. And that's what's up. This is exactly what's up. We are in, the big conspiracy is not about grabbing guns. It's not about grabbing, or not about more, scanners, although those things are part of it. It's about hijacking reality, hijacking time, hijacking reality, and superimposing a lower fourth level experience onto this world. In theosophy, the double is the astral body. It's the body right next to this body. And what they're trying theoretically to do is to bring the reality of the double, the collective reality of the double, into this reality. That's it. That's where we are. That's where we are, boys and girls. This is what it's about. Now, the whole idea is, what do you want to do about it? Where do you want to go with it? How do we deal with it? Well, I think part of it is to kind of understand it, but to not hang out and dwell on it for too long, because then we're giving it too much attention. I've probably given it too much attention already, but I got to get it out of me. And then you've got to be able to affirm other aspects, and that is the most important part. You've got to affirm other aspects that are not that. That are not that. And I can tell you, I'm seeing those aspects happen in people's lives. I'm seeing amazing things taking place in people's lives. People are shedding literally lifetimes of emotional armor. It's dropping. The emotional armor is dropping. People are working through their vulnerability. People are working through their sadness. People are working through their grief. I had a reading the other day with a 71-year-old fellow who I hope to have on the show, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if he will. He's very shy. I'll tell you his story. Extremely abusive childhood, mother and father. And it made his life very difficult, extremely difficult. He escaped into alcohol, drugs, mostly alcohol, to be able to cope and to assimilate and be in the world. 2 failed marriages, 2 sets of kids, and living really at what people would call a poverty level. And yet, He's got a blog. He's somehow sustaining himself. He's quit drinking. He has hepatitis, but he's quit drinking. He went through the DTs, did it all. And every day he gets up now and he asks, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? I can't tell you how important this man's life is. It's incredibly important. It's as important as any Olympian you'll see walk past that great obelisk, the obelisk, not a great one, the obelisk at the Olympic Stadium. And people are doing these things in private. You wouldn't know who this guy is if he's crossing you on the street, but what he's done is nothing short of heroic. He's 71 years old. He could have just put the pedal to the metal, and he just could have just crashed and burned, made people take care of him, pick up the pieces, wipe his diaper, whatever that thing is, right? He could have just indulged in it and did it. But what he did is he pushed against entropy. He pushed against it. And he unplugged these things that had been supplicating him and medicating him his entire life. And he dealt with the horror of his life. And he gets up every day with some level of affirmation, something to live for. I got to tell you, it is these lives that are really the most important lives. And there's a planet of people right now that are going through this. We're unshackling ourselves from the emotional trauma that we have been burdened with on this planet for a very long time. I would say 3,000 years in the Western sense, 10,000 years before that, if you want to get into Babylon and Egypt, 50,000 years before that. And we're here now. We're all here now, and we're all literally taking off our emotional armor. We're dealing with our pain. We're dealing with our grief. We're opening our hearts. This is it. This is happening. It's happening right now. Got another guy, came to me. He lives in London. Same thing. Quit drinking. And he's dealing with all these energies now. It's happening, folks. It's real. It is on. And you're not going to read about this. It's not going to make headlines. Katie Couric's not going to tell you about it at night. There's no grand ceremony and parade for these individual lives. None. But they're facing their darkest hours, and they're getting through it. And so what happens when we begin to do this? Well, we begin to treat each other better. We begin to realize we've all been suffering, we've all been bleeding, we've all been wounded. We come out of it together. It's a birth. It's a birth. We're experiencing a planetary birth. It's happening right now. But on top of it, we've got this whole other charade that's taking place with all these symbols and all this fanfare, and the film and the bleeding of the film and this dimension and that dimension, and the activation of technologies that are, crackling and humming and holding that illusion together. That's all happening now too. And so we've got these two worlds. They're incompatible. They're incompatible. One world is the transhumanist reality, which theoretically is you get to take your brain, your consciousness, and stick it in a robot, theoretically. That's one version of it. Another version of it is a virtual reality, which is personified by the film Vanilla Sky. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. And then the third reality is the physical augmentation of the body so that we begin to live for 150, 250, 300 years. So people like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and all these rich fucks can live forever and spend their money forever and live like gods. That's what it's about. By the way, have you ever looked at pictures of Oprah? Oprah never ages. She never ages. And it's not because she's got a great trainer. No. It's because she's got she's got some kind of technology that she is tapped into. So, all right, here's what I'd like to do. I've been talking for an hour, pretty much, and I'm going to open up the phones, 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995, and if you want to call in, you want to chime in on the Olympics, what you think might happen, where you think this is all going, if you have an experience of your own life, a victory in your own life, something profoundly healing and transformative about your own life, and you'd like to share it, or somebody else's life, call in, bring that to the table as well, because those stories are really important. So 347-308-8995. You can also Skype in, by the way, if you would like to do that. So I think I'm going to watch the opening ceremonies. It goes off at noon here in the States, and you can get the live feed online, or you can wait until the local time. I believe it is 6 p.m. on the East Coast, 8 p.m. in the center of the country, and 9 p.m. for you people on the West Coast with me. So if you want to watch it would be interesting in some ways to watch the live feed versus the edited feed. I think that would be a really fascinating compare and contrast. So I got an email today. It's actually a comment from my last post. I've got one of the readers lives up in Scotland, and says his daughter went to go see The Dark Knight Rises last night, and they had cops in night vision glasses and semi-automatics patrolling the theater. If you want to know what the future holds, that is the possible future. Okay? That's the possible future. And what we're seeing here is something that's being used for us to get used to it. 14,000 troops on the streets of London. Over half a dozen anti-aircraft, anti-missile turrets on buildings around London. Do you think those are going to go away? Do you think that once the Olympics are over, they're going to take those things down? No, they're not. Do you think that those troops are going to go away? Maybe some of them. The vision of the future, by the way, is troops on streets everywhere. 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 When I was in my early 30s, I went to Mexico. Not Bob, but deep into Mexico for the first time. I spent about a week and a half in Mexico City, and I saw these armed guards in Mexico City with semi-automatics, and they're all over the place. Wow, it's like kind of heavy. I mean, their rifles drawn. I mean, it's drawn. It's not a slung over on their back. These guys are standing in the street, by banks, you name it, boom, the gun was there. And it kind of freaked me out. But I had an inkling then that this was potentially where things could go. And that's exactly where they would like things to go, that they would have troops on the streets every day. And this would become a completely militarized police state. And that's a big part of it. That's part of, again, locking down the lower fourth. And then what will happen is, if this reality takes place, if this reality begins to unfold, or that version of reality begins to unfold, then what we'll see the inception of the hybrid soldier, and then ultimately the cyborg soldier. And all those troops on the street, those men, they'll be replaced. They'll be replaced by robots, essentially. And When it gets really good, you won't even be able to tell the difference. You won't even be able to tell the difference. These robots won't look like some futuristic, high-tech, robot-y kind of thing. No, they'll look like humans. Trust me on this. But they'll be robots, and they'll have no conscience. And that's where this reality theoretically is headed. So you got to be able to support this other reality, this emergent reality that's inside of us. And maybe not watching the Olympics is a way to support that, or not watching the opening ceremonies. I got to be honest, I'm still on the fence with it, but I'm probably going to watch it. Only because I know a few things that can keep me less entrained. Okay, if nobody's going to call in, then I'm probably going to end today's show a little early, only because I don't have a lot more to say about the Olympics. I'm not going to break it down more and get more into the esoteric angling of it. So I'm going to give out the number one more time: 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. And if you'd like to call in, chime in, give me an idea as to what you think may occur, or information that you've uncovered, or you want to share a really good story about a victory in your life, I'll hold the space here for a few more minutes and let you do that. Anything else on the horizon? Not much. I'll be back on Monday with the mashup, hopefully. And it's just a time thing. Don't worry, it's nothing big. And then Wednesday, of course, navigating the astrological matrix. And I may have a guest on for the astrology show. We'll see. Monday, it'll just be me. We'll do an Olympic recap on Monday, and maybe we'll get into Aurora just a bit more on Monday as well. Okay, I think that's it, boys and girls. Since nobody's calling in, I'm gonna guide this vessel into port here. By the way, I gotta tell you, I've been listening to "Sail On Sailor" by the Beach Boys for the last 3 days, almost nonstop. If you haven't listened to that song, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. "Sail On Sailor." It was done by the Beach Boys in 1973, and the Beach Boys had relocated to, of all places, Holland. The album is called Holland, and if you look at the cover, it's an epigram. As above, so below. There's a boat on the quay in Holland, and then you see the reflection. And the song is sung by Blondie Chaplin, who is a young South African guy who the Beach Boys had drafted to be in the band. And it was him and this guy, Ricky Fattar, who was also South African, and they were in a band called The Flames. And Dennis Wilson had seen them play at a club in London, loved them, signed them to the Beach Boys record label. They put out one record of The Flames, the only record other than the Beach Boys that was on Brother Records. Anyway, it's a great song, and it's so great because of Blondie Chaplin's voice. Dennis Wilson apparently just wanted to go surf. He did one sloppy take. Brian Wilson was beginning to descend at that point in time. They brought in a bunch of people to help with the songwriting and the composition, and the big force on that track is Van Dyke Parks. But I think it's a great song, and it's the message is fantastic. It is one of real hope and real faith and real affirmation. So if you're feeling down, just go find "Sail On Sailor" by the Beach Boys. That song will bring you right back up. Trust me. The harmonies are incredible on that tune. All right, that's it. That's all she wrote for today. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. Always, I want to thank everybody for showing up in the chat room and listening and participating. I want to have a big shout out and thanks to Erica Maringer, who is instrumental in getting these shows up on YouTube so that people can listen to them off Blog Talk, which can be a little challenging at times, I think, as evidenced by the Jay Widener interview. And so she's terrific. And if you ever need any audio work or image work, you can find her in the chat room, and you can go to mermuse.com, Erica Mermuse on Twitter. Lots of different ways you can avail yourself of her services. She's a superstar. So that's it. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to open what's possible. I'll see you on Monday, and we'll do a recap of what happened this weekend. Take care. You've been listening to the Friday Forecast.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.